Welcome to HR Voices, a podcast for independent HR and people professionals and the businesses they support. HR Voices is brought to you by the expert team at HR Independence Limited. We hope you enjoy.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of HR Voices podcast. I am your host, Mary Asante, and this particular episode is a special one because those of you who have been following HRI, HR Independence, you'll know that we have our annual conference, and a huge part of that conference is the celebration of our various award winners. So today I'll be talking to you and to some of our award winners about the awards, how they got to where they are in their journey to start with, and also how winning the award has made a difference to their HR consultancy business. So first on our award-winning list, drumroll please, is Kate Marson from Mars People Support. Hello, Kate.
Hello there.
Hi. So Kate was our 2025 Inspirational Indie Award winner. Congratulations, Kate.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a great accolade to receive.
Excellent. And for those of you who may not be too familiar with our award categories, the Inspirational Indies Award is a peer-nominated award. So it's a really special award because half the time our winners don't even know that they've been put forward for these awards. So when they receive an email from us that says you've been nominated and you've been shortlisted as a finalist, I think that there is typically a real shock from them because they are not expecting that they've been nominated in the first place, and to be shortlisted as well is a great honor. And in Kate's case and in the other award winners of the past case, when you actually go on to win the award, it's such a huge honor, isn't it?
Oh, it really is. It really is. And it is such a surprise when you get that email. So it's lovely.
Excellent. So if you give listening audience a brief overview of who you are, your background, and how you came to be an inspirational indie.
Thank you. Yeah, so obviously Kate Marston. I run a consultancy now called Mars People Support, which I've been doing for the last 5.5 years. We deal with investigations in terms of the HR aspect. So all we deal with is that investigations piece, whether that's training other people on how to do the investigations or advising around organizations and how to approach or how to prepare or to review their investigations or actually conducting investigations on their behalf. So that's literally all we do. And I guess we got into that because my background, I'm a former detective sergeant from the Metropolitan Police. I predominantly dealt with firearm and gang crime at the time. And I went on from there to head up the investigations function at Burberry, which was a great role, really varied. So it wasn't just investigations, it was heading up their whistleblowing platform, dealing with the e-commerce fraud side of things, travel risk, executive protection, and data analytics. So it was a really varied role, and I had a brilliant team there. So yeah, from there I set up Mast.
Excellent. Thank you for that brief overview of who you are and what you do. And I think we've had a discussion. There's an episode on investigations where Kate dived deep into a model, the PEACE model that she uses as part of her investigations module and is a strong advocate of. So if you haven't listened, please do tune in and listen to that and let us know if you have any questions on that. But so back to today's discussions. You were nominated by peers for this Inspirational Indie Award, which is great. And why do you think, from your view, that people nominated you?
I think I'm very lucky in that I have found, and part of HRI is part of this, I found communities within the HR independent world that are really supportive.
Mm.
And, we're all peers, so we know how hard this world can be of running a consultancy in this space.
Mm.
And I like to think that perhaps some of that nomination came because of how we go about doing our business. So it's not just about making money and that side of business. I think we really try and live by the values that we have as an organization, which are experts in what we do, but also fair and supportive and keeping it simple. And I think the fair and supportive are probably the two big ones when it comes to how we work with others in our ecosystem and that collaborative effect. So I hope that the nomination came, and certainly the information that I got from yourselves when you provided me with the award was around some of that collaborative approach and working with peers. So I hope it ties into how we try and do business and the values that we have.
Absolutely. And I think what makes this special, this category special, is the fact that it's not just about the work you do and you do for your clients, so the paid work, the normally diligence, etc., that will go into that. But it's the recognition that, hey, this is not exactly an easy journey that we are going on. And there might be others who might be at the same level as we are, who are up and coming behind us, or others who may have even been where we are and gone beyond that, but occasionally go through these struggles
Mm.
that we need to support each other through. And it can range from, hey, I'm here for you, and I'm just a listening pair of ears, to I really understand that struggle you're going through, to I know how heavy sometimes, in your case, when you are doing an investigation, how heavy some of the findings, the reporting, and etc. that is coming out, the emotional aspects of dealing with some of these things and all, and that rest on your shoulder as an independent investigator. And sometimes with HR people dealing with complex things that rest on our shoulder, and the whole phrase of who looks after HR, because HR looks after everyone else, sometimes hits home quite hard, because we know that you are there and you're putting on this brave face, the persona, etc., doing your job, doing it diligently, professionally, etc. But underneath all that, it's nice to sometimes have somebody you can count on, and someone that you can talk to, a community you can talk to. And another aspect of it is the collaboration piece of it. It's really nice to know that actually, if I'm dealing with this work and I need to bring in some specialism, I can bring somebody in, or I've got these skills, you have these skills, we can come together and collaborate and put up something so beautiful that it enhances what we are both doing as business professionals, as opposed to the moment I see you, I go, God, that's another investigator. Are they going to take my job? Rather than, actually, this is a good opportunity with Kate's background, with working with the police, working with big retailers, etc., and my background of, say, working in tech or working in this. We can come together, look at the synergies, the differences, and see how best we can do something that
Yeah.
really serves our customers' interests.
Yeah, definitely. There's a saying I really like. It's a book actually, but I can't remember the name of the authors right now. But it's called Send the Elevator Back Down. And I really love that concept of, like, I remember when I started out, and I found you guys quite quickly
Yeah.
into my journey. I think it's 6 months into my journey, but it was during COVID. It was I never planned to be a businesswoman. I was a police officer. I thought that would be my career. And then I happened to move into Burberry, but
Mm.
I'd never set out to run a business. So I didn't really know anything about how to do that, let alone how you find clients, how you build a website. It's all of these other hats that you have to wear while
Mm.
still doing the day job. And what like where I've landed with it now is I can shortcut someone else's journey into that by them not
Absolutely.
taking a year and a half like I did to feel a bit more competent around some of those business aspects. If I can help them shortcut that, then I will, because I do think there's more than enough work to go around, and we can, it sounds really silly, but I think we can all rise together rather than it being competition. And that's exactly the sort of community I think you're building at HRI.
Excellent. And that's amazing. And that's how it should be,
Mm.
because we learn from each other's experiences, right? So
Mhm.
if you've done something, if you've gone down a certain path and it's worked for you, why not share what has worked? And if you've gone down a certain route and again, it hasn't quite worked out, why not
Yeah,
share what was so hard about it to avoid someone making the same mistakes again?
yeah,
And so sending the elevator back down is great, and it's of great benefit, not to the person you are helping or supporting, but as you mentor, as you coach, as you teach others, you yourself grow through that process
mm,
and you learn a lot from that process. So it is very important. Now, how intentional are you about supporting other HR and people professionals?
I think it's at the core of what we do, because I just remember starting out and being so bowled over and shocked by the willingness of other people to help me.
Mm.
And I feel like that there's a sort of debt there that I will forever be paying. So I'm very intentional about it. And yeah, I think it's at the core of what we try and do, really. I get people reaching out all the time now on LinkedIn, whether that's HR professionals or law enforcement professionals that want to do their first step into consultancy and stuff like that. So for me, it's a really important part of the work that we do. And then we're very intentional about setting time aside outside of the running the business, outside of the core duties that we have, to make sure we build community in that way.
Excellent. That is good. And I think the setting up part is very important, because a lot of the time we all know when you're setting up, whether you fell into it, whether you are actively going into it, or what for whatever reason, a lot of the time when you start off, how things actually pan out
Mm.
is different to how you envisage it's panning out. So having someone like yourself, someone like the HRI community or HRI itself as an organization who is there to tell you that, look, it's going to be all right.
Mm.
And you are not in a unique position in that it's a common feeling that people get or a common process that you have to go through. But you are in good hands because you're talking to somebody who's done it before and
Yeah.
who can show you the ropes and point you in the right directions and stuff. So that is really good. Now, you talked about people contacting you via LinkedIn who may be HR professionals or law enforcement professionals who wants to set up and approaching you. You setting time aside to help them, which is a great thing to do. And kudos to you for doing that. But have you ever helped somebody who then becomes a competitor?
In fact, yes, I have. And they're now one of my biggest associates. So, yeah, somebody who I made a connection with and who spoke to me at a roundtable that we hosted said that they were going to be setting up on their own. And I really like his approach. I really like his style. And he's clearly really good at what he did, was my sort of initial thoughts. So I wanted to provide him support and help. But as that sort of happened organically, it was clear that we got on really well, that our approach was really similar. So we found opportunities to work together. They now run a very successful, in their own right, investigations consultancy, but we look for opportunities all the time to work together. So actually, by being open to supporting someone else, I've improved my own working environment as a byproduct of that, because now you know how lonely consultancy world can be. I have a great partner that I can now work with on projects. So I think you don't give to receive, but that has been a natural byproduct of that. And so, yes, they are also a competitor. There's been times where I haven't put in for work because I know that they have, even though we got approached separately and independently, I knew they'd already put into it. So I didn't want to jeopardize that. But actually, the reward that I get from working with them separately is more than that. is worth, if that makes sense.
I think that is a really important aspect to explore, because we all talk about, hey, there's enough work out there for everyone, right?
Yeah.
And we all talk about the fact that by supporting each other and working with each other, etc., we create opportunities, collaborations, etc. But there's the other C word, which is the competition element and competition aspect of it. And knowing really well, like you said, oh, yes, I've effectively helped somebody that now is a close associate of mine. And at the same time, when we come up to the same proposal or bid or whatever, sometimes we decide that, or I decide I'm not going to bid against them because I know they are going forward to it, and they may do the same as well. And there might be other times that they may not know that you're competing on the same
Yeah.
thing. You put together a tender, etc., and then you also go forward for this same work.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the key there is not the fact that, oh, they'll be bidding against me, so they'll make the market more saturated. But the key there is that you would know, you will be nurturing somebody, helping someone who will be in the exact same field as you or similar. And through the good relationship that you build with the person, you can be learning from each other. Because sometimes they may be successful in the bid, other times you might be successful in the bid, and you can both learn from that process, can't you?
Exactly. And we're not always going to know that we're putting in for the same work and stuff like that. It just happened on that particular example.
Yeah.
We did know, and so we didn't respond to we responded, but we said we wouldn't be putting in a bid. But I can think of other examples of people who are allegedly competitors who I can go to for support or questions, or who we can provide advisory services and support to, or they've got too much work on, so they might want to refer it to someone that they know isn't going to then take over that client full time. That so much of what we deal with relies on trust and effectively being a good person, I guess, is what it comes down to. I was trying to think of a way of saying that without using swear words. So, like, being a good person is what we'll settle with. And so,
I didn't know there was a swear word for being a good person, Kate.
well, the opposite of that, like, don't be a whatever. And so, I think there's so many, like, I can think of lots of consultants and HR consultants that are within our ecosystem now that refer us work, knowing we're not going to take over that client, like they're their client. If we can support them when they can't do the work or they don't want to do the work sometimes, then that's great. And if we can support them in other ways, if we can refer other work to them, then we will. So it becomes this really good ecosystem. And so, yeah, I don't really see it as having lots of competitors around, because there is so much work out there. Like the world is there's so much tension in the world at the moment. Of course, then filters into the workplace, which now, well, if you have an unhappy society, the byproduct of that is investigations in the workplace will increase. And so for our world at the moment, there is a lot of work out there, and it's about supporting and doing it in the right way and with the right people, because you shouldn't just take on work because you need the work. You've got to be the right person with the right skills. And something you touched on earlier, actually, around how difficult this role can be, investigators and HR are constantly dealing with other people's trauma. And as a byproduct of that, you're picking up on that trauma, you're absorbing that trauma. And so actually sometimes it's not always appropriate for you to deal with every single case, because actually maybe you've just come out of a really tricky investigation and you need to decompress, because you cannot keep dealing with trauma. You cannot keep putting more trauma on top of trauma, if that makes sense. So even if it's vicarious. So yeah, actually with investigations, the consideration should be, is it right that I'm doing this one right now? And if not, who do I trust that I can pass that on to?
Yeah. And that word trust, I think I want to spend a minute or so on it, because it's so important. And I think in the consultancy world, you have touched on trust in so many aspects, and there's so many facets to trust that is really key. It's important that whether you are just a close associate with somebody, whether you collaborate with them on a project, or whether they're just using you as a sounding board for something they're working on, etc. Trust plays such a huge part, knowing that, okay, me going on this project as either Kate's associate or referral, because sometimes I've worked on projects that I've not done it as an associate for my co-HR consultant, but I've gone in my own right by them referring me, because there are some instances that you need somebody independent of
Yeah.
the original consultant to be able to do that work. And you being able to go in there, do a great job, and at the end of that project or scope of work, being able to walk away and not get greedy and start poaching your colleagues or your co-consultants' customers. It's a huge part of what we do, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's such a short-term benefit. If someone does that, the benefit's very short term, right? Because you're going to lose out on all the opportunities that would come in the future. So you have to, if someone's put trust in you, I think you have to respect that. And actually, it's not just not poaching the client, but also doing the work to the standard that you've been entrusted with as well is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And more importantly, them knowing that, okay, they were right in trusting you in the first place.
Yeah, yeah,
By
because
you,
they don't get anything right from putting you forward. They don't get any benefit to that. And so I take it really, if I'm recommending someone for some work for something, that's your reputation at stake as well as that person's. So yeah, you can't break that trust.
absolutely. Now, how has being generous with your time actually helped your business?
I think that it's made a huge benefit to us insofar as we all know that our network is everything when it comes to getting business. And a lot of us cringe at the word networking, and the thought of it is quite stress inducing. But actually, building that network and having people that will sing your praises when you're not in the room, that will put your name forward when you're not there, is really important. And people getting to know you because you're being supportive to them and helping them is a great way of them building that the know, like, and trust that's needed in networking. So the whole purpose of networking is to build people that know you, that like you, that trust you. And collaborating with people or supporting people is just one aspect of building your network, I guess.
Excellent. What's one opinion you have about HR consultancy that might make some people uncomfortable?
I think that not every HR consultancy or HR consultant is right for every single project and or for every single organization. And so
Mm,
I think the uncomfortable thing is knowing when to walk away or when to say this isn't right for me. And I think that can be quite uncomfortable, particularly when we all know when you start out, you're working in that peak and trough of the financial, the cash flow issue. And it's really uncomfortable to have to turn away income or potential income
mm,
when you're in a trough, right? So I think, but knowing your skill sets and knowing your abilities, knowing your values, I think can
mm,
also play into it, is really important. And so I think for HR consultants, the uncomfortable thing is sometimes knowing themselves well enough or knowing what they stand for well enough or knowing their abilities well enough is important. Because I sometimes, we've all seen tribunals where perhaps people have taken on things beyond their
mm.
expertise, or we've all had examples, I think, where red flags have cropped up with clients that we've ignored because we want to get that paycheck.
Especially where values don't align.
Yeah, we're exactly that. And we've done this ourselves where there's been these red flags and we're like, oh, I'm not sure these are going to be good people to work with, but we'll take that on. And then actually it's only ended up a cost to yourself because they're even not great. They always end up, the ones with the red flags end up being the people that aren't great payers, right? And so
Yeah.
you should listen to yourself because it's far more stress and admin to chase people that aren't paying you on time or and things like that. So yeah, I think just having that awareness for whatever reason it may be, values or otherwise, turning work down sometimes needed.
Great, thank you for that. And what's the hardest part of running a business that people don't see?
I think you can't just be doing the work, right? So you're running a HR consultancy because you're good at HR and you're doing the HR work. But actually, at the end of the day, once you've delivered the work for that client, you've then got to put your marketing hat on and get your website updated. And then you've got to update your LinkedIn. And then you've got to, still do your networking, even though I've got this client delivery to do. And none of that switches off, because if it does, that's when you fall into that peak and trough habit. So it's only once I realized, I need to keep this going regularly and still do my LinkedIn posts and still update my blogs or whatever it is all the time, not just when I don't have work, because you want to be doing that when you have work so that you never not have work. And that took me a couple of years to figure that out.
Right. And what's a decision that you've made in business that changed everything for you?
I would say, ooh, I think the collaborative aspect, having associates and intentionally finding ways that we can work together.
Mm.
Because then I felt like I had a team around me. And like when you've gone from working in big organizations where you can phone phone IT and you can phone marketing and legal and all these other people,
Yeah.
so creating that community around you, and particularly yourselves with the help desk that you offer and stuff like that's a huge benefit when you are so used to having a team and suddenly it's just you sat on your own in your garden shed.
Absolutely. Right. And if you go back to the award, and I want you to imagine again in October in the audience, and the moment you found that it actually won the award, what did it mean to you personally?
Oh, it meant so much, especially because it wasn't an easy list of people to be part of. And I know one of the other nominees really well, Debbie, and actually had nominated her as well. So for me, she is such a worthy winner. So there's an element of you end up with a little bit of imposter syndrome sat next to someone like that. And so it meant a lot. And it just, I think as well, I'm not someone that ever puts myself forward for things that's, look, I'm going a bit red now as we're talking, but I guess behind all the investigation confidence, when it comes to like
Yeah.
talking about me personally, I can be quite shy. And so actually, I felt a bit shy and I felt a bit like I would not have put myself forward for this. So having someone else do it and getting that email and then winning the award just meant a great deal, especially because it's quite like a lot of the work we do is invisible and not stuff other people see, if that makes sense. And all the collaboration that you do or support that you give other people wouldn't necessarily see that. So for someone to see it and to recognize it feels quite nice as well.
That is really nice. And you've made such an important point about, yes, there are different categories of people, isn't there? And personalities and all sorts. And there are people who will put themselves forward for awards, and the moment they see it, I'm great and I'm going to do it. And there will be people like yourself who
Yeah.
would never put themselves forward for anything, even when they are worthy of it. And so I think that highlights one of the key importance of this inspirational indies category, which is where someone stands back, look at what you're doing, and going, actually, you are great, and I'm going to put you forward for this. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that really highlights that. And has
And there aren't
it,
many other awards where you can peer nominate. Like I've looked for them for a couple of people that I think need recognition, say not in the HR space, and
Mhm.
there isn't that many that you can do it. So I think it's quite a unique thing that you've done there.
Yeah,
And I would love to see more of that because actually for the personalities like me
yeah,
that don't do that, like
yeah,
I think it's really important that we can celebrate each other and put each other forward. So
yeah, absolutely. And has it changed anything for your business yet?
it gets a lot of comments actually because I have my little HRI winner on my emails, and it does. I think it
Excellent.
starts It's a great conversation starter. People have noticed it on my LinkedIn or they notice it on an email and they ask questions about it. And I think there's an element of a credibility that comes with it. So yeah, I definitely think it's been great for the business and just another way to help show our clients who we are as an organization.
Excellent. And so I think to round off the conversation, thank you very much, Kate, for such a wonderful conversation and for your honesty about every question that I have asked you today. And for anyone listening who may be on the fence or not sure how far they should go, if others approach them for help, what would you say to them?
I think the more we can help others, the better. The more we can support others, the better. I forever, like I've got like an email now that I actually often copy and paste where it's like, have a look at HR Indies or have a look at this organization or that organization because it doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't
Mm.
cost much to guide others, to help others have shortcuts. And people do remember how you've treated them and how you've helped them. And like there's an element of karma that comes back. And even if not, you're putting something good out there. And I think that's something that just makes you feel good anyway. So yeah, I think help others as much as you can and also, yeah, create what you want to see in the working world, to be honest.
Absolutely. Right. Thank you so much, Kate, for coming and see us and for talking to us about how it feels like to be an award-winning HR consultancy business. So congratulations once again. And yeah, we are looking forward to what lies ahead for you and Mast People Support.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to chat, Mary.
Okay, great stuff. Hello, everyone. So, continuing with our award winners, and next on our list or our guest list is Dylan Roberts. Hi, Dylan.
Hi, Mary. How you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. So, the next category that we are looking at is Innovation Awards, and it was a new category last year. So, Dylan is the first winner of the Innovation Award. So, congratulations, Dylan.
Thank you. Thank you.
And this was introduced because we recognize that within the HR sphere, the HR in this world, basically, though we all deliver HR and people services, some of us go about it in quite innovative ways, whether it's a new product, whether it's an innovative way of doing something that we've always done, such as leadership development or training or things like that. So that is why this category was introduced. And actually, although it was a new category, we got some really strong contenders for it. So again, it is great to have Dylan here with me, and then we will talk more about it. But before we dive into it, Dylan, if you'd like to tell our listeners and our viewers a bit more about who you are and what you do, that would be great.
Sure. So hi everyone. So quick background, I guess. I'm from Wales originally. I spent a lot of time in London, now up in Edinburgh with my family. My background, I started in recruitment 25 years ago, and I've spent sort of the last 17, 18 years sort of in more sort of, I guess you'd call it core HR type roles, be it sort of talent, L&D, or then more latterly into sort of the HR role.
Mm.
And I've then sort of moved up in that space, but always within technology and financial services. So and more recently, sort of fintech. And it's certainly last 10 years has been very much about scale ups. So SMEs moving at pace, scaling quickly internationally, with a lot of both organic growth as well as acquisitional growth through either acquisitions or carve outs. And then obviously you've then got the work that comes through with the integrations around that, which is then obviously the genesis of the playbook which came up with the award. But yeah, that's that part of where we sit in HR, where everything is changing all at the same time. And it's a real success criteria of the business for that integration to succeed is a part of the work that I love, and that's really what I've been centered on doing for the last 3-4 years.
Excellent. Great. So do you want to tell us a bit more about the innovative playbook that you
Sure.
created?
Okay. It just sort of immediately sort of lit a bit of a light bulb in my head when I saw that the Innovation Award came out last year. I thought, I've got something for that.
Excellent.
And certainly, like I say, the mergers, acquisitions, that post-merger integration process, working with the boards of these companies, the investors, on either making sure the carve-out works properly, the transactions working in the right way, or the people are being brought across not just in a legal and safe way, but in the right way. And then to have that sort of harmonization of different cultures and different countries with different teams. It's fascinating to me how all that works. And it's sort of, I think part of the problem was I was seeing the same challenges time and time again. It was the same questions that were coming up, the same pattern around why certain processes were working and some were not, why some deals would potentially fail. You'd hear about some of these in the media. And I looked about for the book that helps explain how to do it well, not just legally, right? Because we have great advisors and counsel that can support us with that, and there's lots of people who have got different experience of everything. But what I was looking for really was a consolidated thing, a box that can help not just HR teams, but myself or technology leaders to move through that process. And there are bits about, but I was trying to sort of find something that was a bit sort of concise and in one place. And that's really where the idea of the playbook came through, was if this acquisition lands on your desk tomorrow and you're in a HR team and you're supporting an organization of say 400, 500 people, and you've suddenly got 100 people coming across the horizon in 8 weeks, and they're in 3 different countries, what do you do? How do you go about it? And it's tools, tips, techniques of how to tackle it from day one, based in part on my experience, having done a lot of these now, but also people feeding into it as well to say these sort of ideas could work, or these sort of ideas could not work, both from HR perspective, but as importantly from the private equity investors as well, because those are the people that have put the deal together, made the deal work. And has the people agenda always been top of their list? Probably not, but very quickly does become so once the deal is signed. So it's to help get us through that difficult sort of 8 to 12 weeks to get the deal across the line and the people through the door.
Excellent. So innovation, or the Innovation Award specifically in this context, is about doing HR differently, right? Or doing things differently. What were you doing that people initially didn't get?
People didn't get. I think I've always described myself as a commercially oriented HR person, right? And it's a bit of I guess it's an odd turn of phrase. We are all commercially minded, of course. And I think certainly in the independent, the consultancy space more so than anywhere, I think. But it's perhaps one of the areas where HR professionals are misunderstood, in the sense that you're not commercial, you look after the people. There's that perception sometimes around the leadership table, which is wrong and needs to be addressed. When it comes to the sort of integration processes, if a merger is going through, it's very easy for leadership teams to turn around and just go, well, you just run the cheapy process, get them across the line, job done. But it's as important for the HR teams to understand what the commercial imperatives of that deal are, what the reasons to, what are the reasons to make the deal a success? Why does it have to happen on this date? What, are there required to be any cost savings? What does that look like? How do we look after people in the right way? Make sure they understand what's going on with full transparency. And a lot of that's been missing in the past. I've seen some processes go through where they've been legally compliant, but not necessarily done that well.
Well, people along with the process.
Exactly, right? So, and what happens then, right? So legally, no one has any recourse because everything's been done by the book, as it were. But what you end up with is a set of people that are wholly disillusioned with the process. They
Or
have
disgruntled.
exactly they've been pulled into this new organization, which they never really heard of before, never wanted to work for, and over time, attrition in that population is likely to go up. But if you sort of take a step back a few months from when the investors, when the PE backers were looking at this, the private equity backers were looking at this, what have they actually bought? You know, they've not bought a box, a company in terms of a box. They've bought a group of people with some ideas who are running some systems and delivering some revenue.
Yeah.
So if you start to lose those people, the technology is not going to run itself. The contracts are not going to fulfill themselves, and the clients are going to start to walk. So you then lose that business. The impact then, albeit you've met the legal criteria of doing it properly, the projected outcome, so EBITDA, the profit metrics that the board will be looking at, that's going to take a big hit, which then makes although the deal has worked because the people are here, the deal has actually failed because it hasn't delivered the return that the investors are looking for, the backers are looking for. It's automatic then to turn around and who they're going to, they'll automatically turn around and, well, it must be the HR team's fault, right? Because the people are leaving. It's like not strictly true, right? You didn't get us around the table early enough. You gave this to us as a fait accompli, and we've had to sort of tackle it from there. So the very first point that I looked at in the playbook was, how does HR get to that table, almost at the very first outset when the deal's being conceived, because you need to start to understand the risks, which you can then start to work on and start to mitigate.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point that you've raised there, how late HR is brought into the process. And sometimes they are the last to know the deal has been signed, done, dusted. Oh, here you go. These people are now coming over next week. You've got to get them in.
Yeah.
Here are their contracts and whatever. And I think the value that HR can bring to that mergers and acquisitions discussions is huge, is immense. And people don't really appreciate that. And I think you're absolutely right in that. I think it's about time that boards recognize that including HR in negotiations, commercial discussions, and all those sort of things really help the business long term and even short term compared to doing any harm to business, and actually leaving your HR team out of the loop till the very last minute is probably one of the worst decisions you can make in that M&A process, right?
Absolutely, and for any process, right? I'm sure many, I'm sure you have as well, and many of the people that would be listening have had the experience of, a manager turning up at the desk on a Monday morning saying, here's my new starter, which I haven't told you about yet, but they're starting now. So that's one side of being told about something too late, but that in and of itself is a relatively low risk situation given the type of the business, of course. But with when it's this scale, it may be to an extent an afterthought by some of the people who are involved in the deal. But if it involves 10 people in an office which is 2 miles away from your core base, that's one part, one side of the extreme. The other side of the extreme is it's 250 people spread across 11 different countries, only 3 of which you have an entity in which you can actually employ them in. And that needs to be completed in 4 months. So how do you employ them in the other 8 countries, and what do their consultation processes look like? And I think there's an opportunity here, certainly for individuals who are operating in the interim space, who have got this experience of working within M&A, acquisitions, carve-outs, or international expansion, is there's organizations which are going through this process which have a brilliant HR team, who can cover all the fundamentals. They've got all the core attributes in place, the L&D is working properly, resourcing is happening well, performance management, that all those sort of key deliverables that the HR team are being asked to deliver to allow the business to engage and get the most efficient deliverables out of its people as possible are working. But they've never done M&A, or they've never done M&A at that sort of scale, and that's where someone like me or other can come in and support them.
Yeah.
Because you're not trying to go in and start to run BAU HR, but you are providing that expertise, that experience to enable them to sort of get over that hump of that change, and also learn how to do it as well if they've not had that experience before.
Absolutely. And so thinking about the playbook and then the innovation aspects of it, what problem in HR annoyed you enough to build a different way, or to find a different way of doing it?
I don't know if I've ever seen any problems in HR, Mary. I don't know if I think the main two parts, I guess, is the lack of a sort of, I guess, a core document set of instruments that you can just pick up and just go with if you need to at pace, right? So does it answer all the questions? No. But does it help you ask all the questions you should be asking? Yes, which is the important bit. The other problem, I think, is around the commercial perception, which I sort of touched on before, which is, in order to sort of affect that process, to actually get the process, the HR process moving as quickly as it needs to, sometimes you need to have either the board or the investors on side, sort of understanding and your position, and to an extent you're building your credibility with them in order for them to see that you are able to deliver what they are asking you to deliver. And the way around that is that demonstration of commerciality. So we have to do this because, so for an example, we have to engage with this group of people far earlier than the statutory requirements, because they're asking questions, they're worried about their job security, they've got families, they've got mortgages to pay. We're saying we're going to bring them in, but we're not going to do it for 8 months. But if we don't engage with them now and talk to them and offer them that transparency and build that trust, they're going to start leaving. And at the point at which the deal then closes in 8 months' time, you've already lost 20% of your people. Some of those are key individuals who might be the only people that know how to run that small part of the system, which has never broken before, but I guarantee you'll probably break in 9 months' time. So it's helping those people whose eyes are not on that sort of people side of the ball, if you will, to have that focus down, and you get them on side by demonstrating, I think, that commerciality. So okay, I can understand, I can see that risk, I can see value to that risk, and okay, what we're going to do to mitigate it. And that's the other side of it, to help people have that conversation.
And I think in addition to that, sometimes it's the costs. In that particular example that you cited, is the cost of managing the damage caused by rumor mills, isn't it? Because when everything is in the dark and no one knows what's going on, etc., and no one is answering any questions that people are asking, then you leave room for people to make up stories, and to the one side that they may have overheard on the phone or when they were passing by a boardroom or something can turn into wildfire stories that you then end up spending a lot of money correcting through communication, through engaging experts such as yourself and communication experts and stuff like that, to, oh, no, it's not like this. And sometimes by the time you even realize that that's been implanted in people's heads, it will be months, like you say, and the people agenda might be 8 months down the line, and that is 8 months worth of damage that sometimes you have to try and undo.
Yeah, and absolutely right. And the strangest behavior that I've seen, I think, is that there's people offer so much of their focus on forgive the parlance, the organization they've bought, right? But the people that are coming in, the people that are being brought in as a group, there's so much focus given to them. They forget about the people who they already employ and they already work with.
Yeah.
And it's as critical to offer them that same level of transparency and support, because they're sitting there going, well, hang on, we've just bought this company and they've got another 100 people coming in through the door. Is my job safe? Am I okay? What's that mean for my organization? Who am I going to report to? So people, they've obviously got the different levers, the different dynamics and the like, but you have to treat everyone as human beings in the right way. From one group's perspective in the deal, people are numbers in a spreadsheet, right? There's no getting away from that, right? But
absolutely,
in the same sentence, they are not, very much not. So our job, our role really is to distill that view, that position, and take it and put it in a human form, right? To put it in a way that people will understand, will appreciate. And if you don't know, it's okay to say you don't know. Right? That's what the consultation process is. And we all know that when we open the door to consultation, we get swathes of questions. But the more, I always said, the more questions, the better. And but you have, I think, earlier rather than later, always, because otherwise people, in the absence of information, the absence of knowledge, people will start to spiral, and that's not helping anybody, especially when it comes to these big figure deals.
Absolutely. Right. And then when you think about innovations of introducing something new in the way you do things, what resistance did you face from clients, if any, when you tried something new?
I would say it's maybe not something new as such, but it might be new to them. So, around sort of methods of communication or putting in place a solution so you can employ people in different countries, right? So I've introduced employees of record for a client, something which they'd never even heard of before, but it made absolute commercial sense to them once they understood the value to the organization to them, because they're not having the issue of having additional corporate governance because they've got new entities everywhere. An employer of record takes that away. It makes things simpler for them, allows them to employ people where, legally they would probably not be allowed to in other ways. So you're helping them to de-risk businesses by explaining to them the benefits. Again, at a corporate level, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. Why is it must have? Because these are the regulations, these are the statutes requirements in that country. There has to be a reason why, because it's going to cost money, it's going to cost investment. So it's if where we're having to bring in these novel ideas, they're not new ideas, talking about legal compliance for workforce integration or rebuilding the organization post-acquisition. These are not new ideas. People have done these things before, but be able to explain these things concisely, in relatively easy, short, digestible form to HR teams that have never done it before. And like I said, it's not about answering all the questions. It's not a checklist that says do this, do this, do this, do this, and it's all going to be rosy. That's not the way the world works. But it does allow people to ask the right questions. So have you thought about this? What's the impact on that going to be? Because everyone's organization is different. Everyone's sort of deal that they're supporting is different. But when it comes to the leadership teams or the boards or the investors having to understand and accept there needs to be something else done, so we need to communicate more. You need to come with me to go see this group of people because they're asking specific questions. The reason, there has to be a why. There has to be a benefit to the organization. There has to be a benefit to, unfortunately, the bottom line for them to be able to sort of sign up and go, yes, I understand. I'll come with you and I support what you're doing. And we're that sort of middle ground between that helps people understand there is a benefit. And the benefit will tend to come down to, for this sort of population, retention, attrition, and engagement. Absolutely. So we like retention, we don't like attrition, but all that takes all these people to engage with them, and you know, people don't like this sort of change. It's going to be change. We know that, but if you can then also leverage positive outcomes for people off the back of it as well. And an example, if you go to the US, and there's a fantastic variety of healthcare insurance providers over there. If you've got two organizations coming together, invariably they're going to have very, very different provisions around the deductibles they've got, or the level of cover that the employer provides. Is it single person, family, etc.? I've been able to do it before, that as part of the two organizations coming together, both populations actually ended up with better healthcare insurance, because you've got a larger population, you've got different insurers. So for lower cost, you get a better deal, which benefits everybody. So, so you end up, you're walking away and all the employees are, have benefited from it, which is a brilliant opportunity. So seeing those little opportunities, which can make a massive difference, is also part of this role as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important point, linked to something you said earlier about not just those coming in, but the people who are already in the main organization, looking at all these people coming over. And I think one of the key things that causes not dispute, but unsatisfaction in mergers and acquisitions is when people come in and they are perceived to have better terms and conditions than the people who are already in the main organization. So carrying out an exercise which ensures that actually for whatever you were paying for the current benefits for the existing ones, you may get a better deal for both parties.
Yeah,
it's a huge thing that may even end up saving cost, right?
Exactly. So and if you've got two organizations in the UK, for example, and one organization has 80 people and the other organization has 70 people, and you go to the insurers, two separate populations, they'll quote for those populations, but there'll be a premium because they're quite small. So the risk is spread over a smaller population, which means the risk profile to the insurers is far higher. If you take that single group of 150 people to an insurer, they will view it more positively because the risk is spread across a far larger population. And consequently, then if you have further acquisitions that build into that group, then it's going to grow and grow, which means your cost per capita comes down. So you're able to offer the employees potentially a far better outcome on those benefits. And also, as the employer, your cost per employee is actually coming down. But it does need you to sort of ask that question and start to understand what the difference is and who has, exactly like I said, who has what, where the difference is going to be. And over the course of time, certainly within, if we look at the UK, there's certain protected contractual aspects which are brought over. Where can synergies be found? Bearing in mind the legislation and the protections that exist.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is the opinion you have about HR consultancy that will make some people uncomfortable?
Uncomfortable? That's quite a broad and open-ended question, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Which is probably why you've asked it. I think there's two ways of looking at it, I think. So one way is why would people go into HR, independent HR consultancy, which because it can make them uncomfortable, and why would clients potentially feel uncomfortable about bringing on an independent? So I think from the first one, obviously it's a little bit of a self-starter type of position, right? You're leading yourself into the world, so that there's that element of having to sort of take yourself out into the world to do it, and you are dropped in generally where things are already sort of going a little bit wrong half the time. So if it's an M&A deal, you aren't going to be brought in at the outset of the deal. The last one I was brought in, I was brought in and said, right, we've we've bought that one and we've just closed this one, and they all need to happen in 3 months' time, please. And we've never done this before. Fabulous. And you have to have that resilience, I think, to be able to just go, that's okay. What do we know? And then list out that, and what then do we need to ask, and find out the rest of it. That for me, I love doing that. I love that sort of environment. I always have. So I've always sort of worked in sort of startup environments, and where that sort of, that change is happening all the time. It doesn't suit everyone, but some people enjoy it, and I think that's part of the role. I think for clients, it's a bit of a, it can be a difficult decision for them, because they already have a HR team in the main in this sort of size organization. So if they already have a HR team, to bring in someone else, then that's going to obviously cost some money. But what's the benefits of it? What's the commercial reality, commercial benefit that individual can deliver? And in the main, they're not buying you, they're buying your experience. They're investing in the experience that you have to come in to solve their problem, to make their life better, to make their company more efficient, and deliver better returns at the end of the day. And because it's HR role to help the people and support the people where required. So it's an interesting question. I think I love it. I don't think I could go back to doing a permanent role now.
Yeah.
But then last client I was working with, I was with for 18 months. So you do get to know and feel part of a group of people, even sort of while being independent. So it's not like you don't lose that level of engagement, but it's a different type of role.
Excellent. Great. And what's the one decision you've made that changed everything for your business?
Taking all the vowels out of the word people, if I ended up with PPL. That was a lockdown inspired decision, but it still makes me giggle every time I look at it. I don't think there's been one specific thing he says that, other than I think I could take the decision to say I'm going to apply and talk to everybody about all sorts of interim HR roles. Okay, I've sat in the talent seat, I've led resourcing teams, I've run L&D and regulated, non-regulated space, I've been the chief people officer, I've run operations, the back office. I'm actually a sort of a technologist and mathematician by training, so I've got that whole mix. And I'm certainly going, I could go for interim, this, or talk to a client about doing some fractional CPO. But there's lots of great people who are in that space. I think what I bring, and I think this is the decision to answer the questions, I've specifically decided to focus on integrations, acquisitions, M&A, because that's the part of the process, the part of the corporate world in which HR operates that I love the most. And I think that's the key bit to take away, is over time, you'll work out, and you do work out, I think, what part of the process you love the most. Is it coaching? Is it development? Is it sort of more sort of operations? Is it more generalist work? Is it ER? For me, sort of sitting between the people who are going through the deal, working with the investors, advising the board around how best we can get this group through and supported and engaged and sort of on side by the time they come across. That for me is the part of the process that I love the most, and that I think is giving me that focus. And then over the last sort of 2-3 years, that's been entirely what I've been working on.
Excellent. And what does winning, so take your mind back to October at the conference, what did winning the award mean to you?
So I've in corporate world, before I became independent, right? We won a few awards, which were nice things to have, but they didn't really mean too much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
This meant something to me, and I still tell people that now. It's still there. The award is still just here, just my shoulder, and it means something because it's been awarded to me by my peers, and that for me is massive. It's not a commercially driven sign that you've bought to say something and to have some sort of company, advertising aspect to it and stuff. There's an awards category which is relevant. I've put a submission in relevant to that category, and peers to me have reviewed it and looked at it and felt it worthy of the award, which is quite humbling, to be honest. But yeah, it was very excited. I was shocked to find out that I'd been shortlisted. I was even more shocked to find out that my name wasn't read out third or second, if I'm being honest with you. And I sort of sat there going, "Oh my goodness!" in the side of that room in London a few months ago. So it was lovely, and my kids laugh at me because I sort of brought this award home. I was trying to explain to them what it meant, and they've basically just decided that I've been given an award for Man of the Year 2025. So that's, which I'll also take brilliant from the kids, right? I'll also take that.
Excellent. And has it changed anything for your business yet?
Not yet, I'll be honest, because I took some time off over Christmas because the last contract had run on. I hadn't really taken a break, so I've sort of benefited. I've been able to take a good chunk of time off over the last month or month and a half. But yeah, it helps position in terms of you presenting your ideas. It's like, I have this validation, which I don't feel a need to talk about it. It's on my LinkedIn profile, and I do mention it to people if it's a relevant point and stuff. But it's not something I feel I have to shout, because it's there to sort of back up what I'm saying to people. I'm explaining to people why we should do this or how we should do that, and it's just quite nice to have this additional validation behind you that goes, we also feel he's doing some good, and he knows what he's talking about, which is handy.
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us once again, Dylan. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I'm pretty sure we can probably talk for much longer about innovation, HR, etc. And so, congratulations once again, and can't wait to see what's next for you, where you take the business next. And thank you everyone for joining us today. If you have any specific questions about the conversations that we've just had with Dylan or with any of our other winners, please do get in touch and let us know.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of HR Voices. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover or would like to be a guest, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media or email us at hrvoices@hrindependence.co.uk. Tune in next time.